Hey guys, I really want to thank you guys for hanging out at the amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con once again. And it's cool that you guys are here on Sunday. I see, do I see a lot of three-day badges, a lot of VIPs? A lot of people are coming back more and more. Well, you know what? That's really important because if you're coming down here for one day, that is fantastic. I love you too. The 3-day people, I love you too. The 2-day people, love you too. But see, what I think is cool and what we're trying to do every year at Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con is adding more and more programming and cool interactive activities all throughout the entire weekend. Because I think collecting experiences are what comic conventions are about. It's not just getting a signature, it's not just digging through back issue bins and stuff like that. It's collecting that experience. And we have a great experience for you this afternoon and this entire weekend. As you guys know, legendary creator George Perez, this is his farewell tour. Everybody loves George. I don't know any one person that could say anything bad about George Perez. They love his artwork, they love his personality, they love what they give to the fans. Those are all reasons that we love George Perez, and we are so fortunate to share the last professional West Coast appearance by Mr. George Perez. So during this session, we have a great panel coming out to you. It's going to be presented by Collider. I want you guys all to, if you guys have smartphones, take out your smartphones, follow Collider on your social media, okay? Because they are absolutely awesome. They are top destination for pop culture news. They have so much entertainment stuff, a lot of comic book content, and they love the stuff that we love, and we're celebrating pop culture all weekend long. I'm going to introduce to the stage right now Mr. Coy Jandro. He is from Collider, and he gets to hang out and talk George Perez with you guys all for the next hour. Thanks so much. Coy?
Thank you. How we doing, guys? To say I'm a comic fan doesn't do justice to my obsession, and to say that the man I'm about to bring up on stage is an icon doesn't do him justice. The man shaped so much of our lives and was an awesome dude while doing it, and that is a beautiful, occasionally rare thing. But before I bring up George, there's someone who knows him incredibly well, and I want her to tell you some more of the greatness that is George Perez. Constance, will you join me?
Hi, everybody. I'm not going to put you in a line yet. I know that I'm not who you want to hear from, so I'm just going to take a quick minute to give you a glimpse into the George that I know, who might not necessarily be the George that you guys all know. Now, if you had created Starfire and Nightwing, and if you had drawn these iconic characters, none of which are on the screen because I just got a horrible look of me on a Jumbotron. If you had created these iconic characters and had this storied career of fame and accolades, you might think that that might make you pretty proud, right? And you'd have every right for that. But if you ask that man what makes him the most proud and what gives him the most joy, he will tell you. He will tell you that in the past year, he has raised money for over 23 charities, not counting the Hero Initiative, which he gives generously to every year, but charities like Autism Speaks and St. Jude, and here today, Shriners Children's Hospital. He will tell you that he's raised over $100,000 for these charities, and he's done it gladly and gratefully that his art and his fandom can make that kind of an impact. And to me, that's incredible. That out of all of these things, out of all of these accomplishments, and out of all of these lives that he's touched and stories that he's made and characters that he's drawn, what this man is most proud of is what he's been able to give away. And I don't know many people that you can say that about. So I think we should all take a minute, think about that, and then give a giant round of applause to Mr. George Perez.
Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Your check's in the mail, Constance.
I've got to start off with one of my favorite things about you is your love of your wife. And I'm going to start with non-comics because I love the shirts. I love the pure passion. I love that you know the amount of weeks. And I can't.
months, anyway.
It's so beautiful and specific. And I want to. How did you meet your wife? And we'll start there.
Okay, personal stuff that probably doesn't matter to most of you, but a friend, or I should say ex-friend, unfortunately, was talking about this woman he met at a party, and he wanted to drive her to the airport, but he wanted me to meet her. Worst mistake he ever made, obviously. And that was March 1st, 1980. And I met Carol, and we got along fine, but didn't make any assumptions that anything was going to go beyond that because, of course, I assumed she was my friend's girlfriend. She disabused me of that on our first date, October 17th, 1980. That not only wasn't she interested in him, and I didn't know this, she said, "Oh, I fell in love with you on first sight," and was hoping I would finally get, to the point that I would, at least ask to go out to lunch with her. And interestingly, it was my friend when he said, Carol really wants to go out to lunch with her. And when you go out with her, then find out why she's not returning my calls. So he actually was sending me out as a spy. And then I did have a previous marriage, and I was still a little gun shy. And I told Carol I wanted, a platonic relationship. So, and she was willing to honor that. And I was coming back from a convention in Thanksgiving. It was, I believe it might have been in Houston. And usually I had my friend to pick me up at the airport because I didn't have a car. And I decided just to call Carol and asked her if she would pick me up at the airport. And she said, "Oh, I'd love to. I found someone. Can I bring him with me?" And the way my heart sank, I didn't expect it to. And I thought, okay, George, you really blew that one. So, I arrived at the airport in New York. Carol finally showed up. She was alone. And I asked if the person was parking the car. Oh, didn't I make that clear? I found a dance partner. Deliberate omission of words. She said, "You said you wanted platonic. I'm going to call your bluff. Because if you really wanted it, I didn't want to waste my time." And we were intimate from that day on. And we were engaged January 15th, 1981. And on the 26th of this month, we're celebrating 456 months of marriage, which for the mathematically challenged is 38 years.
So incredible. I had to start there because it's so beautiful and such a wonderful tale that brings me into comics.
And she makes all my shirts. When you see me at convention, my wife makes all my shirts. So I cannot go to a convention without a Carol Flynn original for fear that people are going to think, "Oh my God, something is wrong with their marriage." I can hear the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse galloping in now, Because I told Carol, we have a responsibility now. I ache when I'm not with her. She actually gave up a dancing thing just last week. She was going to spend an entire 3-day weekend at a dance function that I was paying for, the hotel and everything else. She wanted to leave early, and she told everyone and then told me, "I miss my husband." After 38 years. How lucky can one man be? And I got to draw comics, too.
So that's the love of your life. And the other love of your life being comics. How did you fall in love with comics?
Oh, like most people, I was about 4 or 5 years old and picked up my first comic. It was an issue of Detective Comics with Batman, the silly period. I think Batmite might have been in it. And I just started doodling. We were a poor family, so I would doodle on paper bags, grocery bags. And just my brother and I were always doodling. And at one point in my life, I thought my brother David was going to be the artist in the family, but he left it to pursue sports and other things much younger. And when I was in high school, freshman year high school, a classmate, his name's Tom Shiaka, took me to my first comic convention. Now I was addicted. Now there was that's my focus. I wanted to be a comic book artist, and nothing was going to deter me. So I just, kept drawing, showed comic conventions. Eventually showed my artwork to professionals. I still have the blisters on my back for that. And gladly, at the age of 19, when I was working as a bank teller right after high school, artist Rich Buckler, who had seen my artwork at a convention, needed an assistant. He had a few. So, I didn't get to do really much drawing assistant. It was more like gopher work. But I got to go with him into the offices of Marvel Comics. I got to see all these people. I saw Bill Everett, Frank Robbins, all these gigantic greats from the early days of comics. And people saw my work, and they knew I was hungry. I was going to keep working, drawing. That finally, at the age of 20, I got to do my first professional work, which was Astonishing Tales number 25, which introduced Rich Buckler's Deathlock, the Demolisher. And there was a 2-page gag strip at the end of it, and that's my first professional credit, where it shows cartoon versions of Doug Mensch and Rich Buckler coming up with ideas, discarding them, throwing all the discarded pieces of paper into the trash can, and they leave the room, and out of the trash can, from those discarded ideas, comes Deathlock. And to show that, hey, I was still green, Rich Buckler drew the Deathlock figure. He wouldn't trust me with that one. But then, I had the greatest education possible. I never had an art lesson. Because I was an honor student, when I applied to high school, I got accepted to the New York School of Art and Design, but my mom really wanted me to have a Catholic education. So I went to a highly scholastic rated Catholic school. I applied for their art program, and I wanted to relearn Spanish as my mother tongue. But because I'm an honor student, they gave me Latin instead of Spanish. And they canceled the art program the year I came in. And to make this come full circle, a few years ago, now anyone who's ever gone to any school, any college can identify with this, I was asked to come back to my high school for George Perez Day. You're coming back to your school as a conquering hero. They were showing slideshows of all my artwork, including on a screen behind me at the auditorium, from another graduate of that high school who donated the screen, Martin Scorsese. So my stuff is being shown on a screen provided by Martin Scorsese. And they had me lecture at the art classes. They had me giving encouragement to the student body. And believe me, it took every bit of self-control not to utter the words I wanted to utter, that good luck with the art classes in the classes they didn't give me when I was in this high school. But again, it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling. So that brings that full circle.
What inspires your very detailed but dense style? Your panels are so lush and full of life and with depth. How did you develop that style over time when you were first starting?
I was inspired by some people who did some really lush detail work, like Barry Windsor Smith. Red Nails was a revelation for me. And other artists, including Jim Starlin, when he was also starting out with Captain Marvel and Warlock. And one of the things I realized, I was churning it out very quickly when I started. So I was doing 3.5 books a month. But then if I really wanted to have a long-term professional life as a comic book artist, I had to start really knowing how to draw. I can't fake it. And the amount of detail I kept adding, even when I was just starting, was because I was so in love with the idea, oh my God, I'm actually drawing comics. I'm actually doing what I wanted to do since I was a child, and I'm being paid for this. And I always thought, even though the rates were horrible when we started, I'm lucky to be drawing comics. I want to show them I'm worth what they're paying me. So I add more and add more. And I enjoy team books. And at the time, particularly the days when they didn't offer you royalties, so you got the same page rate for drawing a book that had a single lead character as you would to get a book that had a dozen lead characters, I wanted to draw the dozen lead characters. So I became valuable to the industry because I did the books that no artists wanted to do. Now, of course, every artist wants to do team books. That's where the money is. But I did it because of the sheer love of it. And because when you draw, you tend to be alone in the studio, I credit doing team books for keeping my social skills intact, because I didn't treat the characters as just costumes that I like puppets that move around. I tried to imagine what they were like inside those costumes, which is why I tried to draw faces individual, so that they are individual characters. I have to pay attention to their body language, to the way they look at each other, and some basic changes, basic uniqueness in their faces, and that the way they communicate with each other kept it always in my mind how I need to interact with society around me. And they were, they were about writers writing themselves. I mean, art characters writing themselves. But eventually, they seem to be writing me too. But I just love doing team books.
What's your creative process for inventing characters? You've brought us so many characters, like you have made them from your own mind. Are you walking around and one just pops up? Are you sitting? Do you have like a process for
Well,
inventing?
actually, the bulk of them were done with a writer. So I wasn't the sole person who came in. I mean, when, like in the Teen Titans, Marv had a pretty good idea of what he wanted. He described the characters. He had no ideas of what I was going to do visually with them. Like when I imagined Starfire, I imagined her Red Sonja in outer space. So I used her, and I used a specific model in mind when I designed her body, and my first wife when I designed the face. And Raven, I imagined her like a female phantom stranger, and trying to play that up. Cyborg, I had a greater identification with Cyborg because he was an inner city youth. I was born and raised in the South Bronx in New York. So I had more that I could identify with him. And I used as a visual template for him, young Jim Brown, the football player. But because of the fact that I didn't think the Titans would last 6 issues, there were some shortcuts I took in defining the characters I might have done differently, but in a way I'm glad I didn't, is like the soul self for Raven, straight out of the Doom Patrol, Negative Man. Cyborg, the half metallic mask, Deathlock, the inspiration for that. And again, I mentioned Raven being basically Red Sonja in outer space. And certain things I might have designed differently if I actually thought these characters were going to go anywhere. How could I imagine I could retire thanks to the Teen Titans? And I thank Marv every single time I see him for convincing me to do a book that I did not think would last 6 issues. And Marv says, neither did I. But we did it out of the fact that he just wanted to do a fun book of character. Marv had ideas. He really had a strong passion for it. And by the 8th issue, the Day in the Lives issue, which happened to be the book I was working on when I had my first date with the woman who is now my wife, that's when I realized these characters were now special, and Marv and I were now working together to flesh out our babies.
Now, I love that you see using them to be social, and now they're 3D, they're real, like Starfire's right here. What's it like to see that?
Now, I must confess, when I knew I was coming in Las Vegas, there's this lovely young woman, a cosplayer, her name's Cheyenne Wise, and I actually, tell you the type of fan person I am, when I saw photos of her as a character, I was the one who emailed her to let her know I'm coming to Las Vegas, that I hoped that she would be here so I can have my photograph taken with her. And the thing is, I am so in love with the idea that you fans you don't know how much you honor me and my profession. When you're standing online, when you're taking the trouble of looking at the designs, trying to make them your own, making costumes, doing charitable work as the superheroes. You don't know how that brings joy to my life. I remember a few years ago when as cosplay was starting to become popular, I had become pretty much jaded from going to conventions because I've been doing it at that point, for 30 years. And I did this in Dragon Con, which is really the cosplay mecca of the world. And And I tell it to them, and I'm telling this to Cheyenne and her friends as well. With everything that I have been have been working for so many years, the cosplayers sparked my love for comics again. You guys, by honoring what I did, suddenly made me feel, I'm now the youngest 65-year-old you will ever meet, and that's because of all of you in general and cosplayers in particular, and I thank you all for that. Give yourselves a round of applause for that.
Another of my favorite runs of all time is your take on Wonder Woman. How did that come to be, and what was it like reinventing such an iconic character?
Yeah, that was a surprise to a lot of people. Because I walked into the office at one point, and this was after Crisis on Infinite Earth. I had done my run on Titans, History of the DC Universe. Pretty much I was in a position I could have asked for anything that I either would have wanted to draw or that already existed or create something. I had pretty much carte blanche at DC. And then I was watching, I knew that John Byrne was doing Man of Steel. Frank Miller had just had his run on Dark Knight and was getting ready to start with David Mazzucchelli on Batman Year One. And then I saw what they were having to do with Wonder Woman. And I was in the office, and there wasn't a single female employee at DC, and this is a company that had a woman for a publisher, who were happy with what they had to do with Wonder Woman, because if they don't, they lose the rights to Wonder Woman, because they still had a contract with the Marston estate. And I had an idea for a Wonder Woman story that I was going to do before Crisis, before the series that ended up ending Wonder Woman's current run. And this was before CGI and everything else. And I wondered, having been inspired by what Walt Simonson did with Thor, what if Wonder Woman was treated like a Ray Harryhausen special effects fantasy movie? So I wanted to do a Challenge of the Gods type story where she would meet fighting skeletons, hydras, all these mythological characters. And then the book got canceled. So when I came in there, I was just visiting friends at the time, and the editor, Janice Race, was telling me what the story was going to be like that they had for the first issue, that they had to accept. Time was at a premium at that point, and showed me the artwork. And all I thought, for the female premier character in comics, the company was going to be eviscerated for it, because the artist was more suited to drawing Penthouse. And hey, it's not like I have anything against that, but that's not what you want on Wonder Woman right now. And to give you an idea of certain things, like people praise me for creating Julia Capitellis, the female professor who became her guide. She wasn't in the original story. When Wonder Woman arrives at Man's World, and it's in the first issue, as opposed to how I left that until the third issue, she ends up in an alleyway. Some men try to rape her immediately. Some guy comes in, chases the guys away. It's a priest, and she ends up in a house for wayward women. I said, "You're going to be killed if you release this as Wonder Woman." And I asked the editor, I have some ideas, and I haven't worked a background because I wasn't planning on it. But if you give me a little time, would you like me to do Wonder Woman? First time I ever got kissed by an editor. And then by a publisher. I got kissed by Dick Giordano, too. And they gave me the time I needed to create a backstory. And the writer on the book was very gallant about it, was willing to work with me. But after the second issue, with all the changes that I was making along the way, he, without any rancor, without any bitterness, says, this is really becoming George's book. I think it's better that I just bow out. I think he also left the industry because he was doing regular prose writing. And Wonder Woman became mine. Since I was starting out as a writer, Karen Berger, the new editor on the book, was a little hesitant for me to write the dialogue because she didn't know how well I could write. And again, she was banking a lot on Wonder Woman. So she hired Len Wein to do my dialogue. But all the story concepts were mine from that point on. And then, of course, by issue 17, I got a chance to finally take over as a scripter as well. But Karen was my champion, because everyone saw Wonder Woman in the all-boy club there as a female Superman. And I said, no, she is a fantasy character. She's a character of myth. There are certain aspects of her I don't think have ever been experimented with or explored. And the mythology was one thing, again, inspired by Walt Simonson on Thor. The fact that she was a herald for peace. I got rid of Steve Trevor as a love interest because I was tired of seeing a male Lois Lane. You know, I thought Lois Lane was a dumb character after a while, and so was Steve Trevor. So I tried to make him valid by making him an older brother type, making Etta Candy a role model, despite she was overweight and everything else. But she was a military officer, very, very capable. I wanted to show that beauty is not pigeonholed, and creating female characters there that fit all age groups, all ethnic backgrounds, all sizes, to show that heroism does not have a singular defined shape. And one of the things that Diana, as I called her, I never wrote her as Wonder Woman, I always wrote her as Diana. The fact that she was the only mainstream big league superhero who practiced a religion. And at that point, and I still am pretty agnostic, but I got to develop a great respect for those people who do follow a religion in its best sense, you know, not when it separates people, when it unites people, because of Diana, because I had to get into that mind to study what makes her so genuinely good. And I think I became a better man because of Diana. And I am grateful for her. And I'm grateful that when I left the series, it was, you know, Karen Berger had to leave because of maternity leave. And the guys who were doing her, you know, had their own ideas of Wonder Woman, some good, some were changes I wouldn't have agreed with. But thanks to the movie that came out and finding out from the fans, because I wasn't at the premiere, I want to do the premiere, and people saying they captured my Wonder Woman. But they said, but they made changes. I said, well, so did I, when I got on it. And when I saw the movie, I said, okay, there are a lot of major changes in the historical aspects of her, but character-wise, and I really didn't realize until then how much I did contribute to Wonder Woman's personality in the modern times, until people pointed it out to me, because for me, I was too close to it. And when I heard that Patty Jenkins, the director, based her concept of Wonder Woman on two people, William Marston and George Perez. And then when Phil Jimenez took a screenshot and showed among the thank you credits my name separated from everyone else's, I said, oh my gosh, I never knew that my Wonder Woman would last that long. And for the number of women who thanked me, executive women who thanked me for Wonder Woman, I have to remind them, I didn't create the character. But despite the fact that all my wonderful financial success are primarily due to the Teen Titans, that I can retire because of the Titans. Wonder Woman, that was my personal triumph. A character that everyone had given up to, but all I wanted to do was say, if I can show that no character is so bad or so helpless that you can't, if you put your love and dedication to it, make it work. Diana was that for me. I am so incredibly proud of my run on Wonder Woman, yeah.
We talked about the Wonder Woman film, and Endgame was also this year, and we're living in a time of these comics that we've loved since childhood are in a new medium, and they're actually translating because the technology's there. What's it been like seeing stuff that was so fantastical and only available in comics translate to the masses in a all new way?
And while I understand, obviously, we're dealing with a different audience, and like people ask, I've never seen the Titans cartoon. I've never seen the Titans live-action TV series. And I know there are people who love it, fantastic. But remember, I'm the one who designed them. I've yet to see, which is why I'm absolutely in love with Cheyenne. Anyone actually do my characters, the way I designed them. They all look so different that I have a mental detachment for it. Marv embraces them more because conceptually, Marv can identify with them. Visually, I can't. They don't look like my characters. But when I see young children who grew up with the cartoon, really that next year, that cartoon is 20 years old, the original Teen Titans cartoon series, and seeing that it led them into reading the comics, led them into what are the grown-up Titans like? And okay, now I understand it. I respect it. But I tried to watch Titans Go to the movies just recently because it was playing in the hotel room, and after 10 minutes I couldn't watch it. I'm sorry, it was just too. But you know the thing that flattered me the most was when they were doing a copy of the Marvel, the flipping of the images that they do for Marvel Studios, and they were doing that for the DC, for the Titans movie. They said, I recognize that Starfire, that's my Starfire up there. And it is a wonderful feeling. And I am glad that now when I tell a person I'm a comic book artist, I may as well tell them I'm a rock star. And, it's wonderful because we had an Uber driver taking us from a Cirque du Soleil show here, and Joe Rubenstein and I were talking, and so the guy overheard. He said, "Do you do comics?" And when he found out I created the Titans, he said, "Oh my God, I'm starstruck." I had to make sure my Uber driver didn't crash us. And I actually had an Uber driver back in Florida take a selfie from his driver's seat to get a photo of me. He said, "My God!" And my wife had to constantly remind me, "Honey, accept the fact you're a celebrity." I said, for me, I'm just a starstruck fan who can't be more grateful for the life I have thanks to comics.
Now, the medium of comics for me is the best combination of literature and art. It's truly supersedes all others for me. What is your favorite thing about the actual medium? Is it the bringing people together? It's the stories and the scope you get? Is it the infinite budget and the panels? Or like, what makes you love comics?
For me, love comics is like, for me, it was a fantasy that got me out of the South Bronx. I was in a very violent neighborhood. It kept me out of being in gangs and everything else, but it also made me the outsider. And one of the things about creating stories with these characters, they're all outsiders. And despite anything, you had a man whose entire planet was destroyed, who came to this planet, and with the power to become man's conqueror, he became man's servant. He was a hero. And the idea of heroism and doing good for the sake of being good enchanted me. I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to create stories about heroism, that heroes shouldn't be defined by being the last man standing in a fight. It's because they took the moral high ground. They won because they were good. I remember one thing that used to bother me as I was growing up, when the way they described Superman, particularly when Batman's darker nature was being brought back into the comics. Superman's an overgrown Boy Scout. Suddenly, when did being a Boy Scout become a pejorative comment? They're out to do good deeds, and the idealism of Boy Scouts. So when is that becoming an insult? How jaded are we becoming as a society when, if a person is doing good just for the sake of being good, we wonder, what is he really after? And I think we need more heroes. We need more people who don't need to be rewarded for being good, but being good, as they say, for goodness sake.
I could talk to George for 4 hours, but we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to let you guys ask some questions because it's George Perez, you guys, and I don't want to be that selfish. So I'm gonna get this cube out. It's a microphone, which always blows my mind. Maybe. So I'm gonna toss this around, and we'll get to some questions. Little man in Super Mario shirt. There we go.
And talk loud. I'm going deaf.
So, what is your favorite person you ever created?
Oh, see, that's a question I get asked a lot, and I'll tell you, you're asking me to choose among my children. That's why I do team books, so I can do all the characters instead of having to concentrate on one. Because anyone who has a family and has more than one child, if they're asked, who's your favorite child? One day this one might be, the other day the other one might be. And it's the same with me. I mean, I love everybody, which is why when I was asked to do the Avengers, when I was asked to do JLA Avengers, when I was asked to do Crisis on Infinite Earths, I was asked, what characters did you want to draw? How many characters do you have? I wanted to draw everybody. That's why I got into comics.
Did you have a question too, little man?
Pass it on to somebody else. Who wants to know? Oh, you got it.
How was your work on Infinity Gauntlet?
What do you mean? How was it?
How did you enjoy it?
Oh,
What was your favorite drawing?
Well, the thing is, I just enjoyed drawing all the characters, and when I found out, now I felt a little bad at first drawing Infinity Gauntlet because I thought it should have gone to Ron Lim from the very beginning. And when I got a chance to draw all these Marvel characters, I had been drawing for Marvel so long, I was working at DC, I said, yes, just tell Jim Starlin I want a lot of characters in there. But Jim already had the script ready. And so I was drawing it, but I was also drawing a series from DC Comics called War of the Gods. and I couldn't handle it all. But when they originally asked me when I was falling really far behind on issue 4, is that to have Ron Lim finish issue 4, and I could jump onto issue 5. But I said, I don't know if I can ever get back on time. And really, give it to Ron. Let Ron finish it. He should have started it from the beginning. He did the Infinity Gauntlet before that. He and Jim Starlin were already working on Thanos and Silver Surfer. He should have gotten it. But I didn't want the fans thinking that I left the book because I was angry or anything else. So I said, let me ink Ron's covers for the book so they know that I'm still participating. But it was just, I had too much work to do, and that's why I couldn't do it all. But while I was doing it, I want to make sure if I'm coming back to Marvel, I want to make sure this is the guy you've been missing. So I tore it up on Infinity Gauntlet, you know.
Next question. Hands? There we go.
Yeah, pass it over there.
George, just want to say thank you for everything.
My pleasure. Yep.
When you were growing up, when you were growing up in the neighborhood reading comics, what was the one character more than all the others that inspired you?
I don't think it was one single character, but at first there was the artist who inspired me. Again, it was the art, because I can sense the different styles even then, even though many comics didn't have credits. Kurt Swan was my first influence. Jack Kirby came in, and then the real game changer, Neil Adams. And then there were others like Barry Windsor Smith, Gil Kane, John Buscema. John Buscema's Avengers I worshipped. And then you had Neil Adams doing X-Men. You know, it's like, oh my God, all these people that were coming out there. And again, I can see little bits of them in all my work, and then trying to filter them through my own style. Because I didn't want to. There was only one Neil Adams. I didn't want to be another copy of Neil Adams. I didn't want to be a copy of Kurt Swan or Jack Kirby or anyone else. I had to find a way of taking all that I learned and filtering it to my style, as weak as it might have been, and try to create an identity of my own. But more than any one single character, it was the creators who really inspired me.
Back corner
there's
there.
some people, yeah. Toss it. It's Nerf.
We love it. I'm going to miss you, George.
Okay. There we go. Yeah.
Safety second.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you, because you made the independent Wonder Woman that we all like. That's not dependable, you know. It's
Thank
not
you.
her. And Teen Titans, it was all good to be different and be still good, you know. We're good for our own differences. But my question for you is, now that you're retiring, what are you going to do?
Well, I'm married. And my wife is a ballroom dancer. She's also a belly dancer. And I really want to just go in there and support some of her endeavors. She's been there to support mine. And I still intend to be drawing. I mean, for those, if you're young, cover your ears. I've had a lot of friends in the fetish industry, and I do fetish videos for them. So I do a lot of writing, editing, and special effects. I do superheroines, cat fighting, and everything else. And
What's the link for that?
dtwrestling.com. And I'm also, one of the shows I still do regularly, and I'll be doing it for my 11th straight year, is Fetish Con in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I host an event with all these girls dressed up as superheroines and getting tied up on stage. What kind of life do I live? Oh, God, you don't know. I love it. So that's one thing. That's one thing I'll be doing. I did do one more new page for Marvel. For that Marvel 1000 that had the 80 pages, there is a new one-page story there by me with a writer who was writing the White Tiger character, because I wanted to do one last page with the White Tiger, because he was the first character I got to draw on a regular basis at Marvel Comics. If it's going to be the history of Marvel Comics, let it be part of my history too. And I do crossword puzzles. I like to travel, and I'm actually doing a fetish comic book using the same characters I use in my the fetish videos, with all these beautiful young women who are jazzed that this senior citizen is making them heroes. And I can spend as much time as I need per page. There are no deadlines, because now it takes me 2 weeks minimum to do one page because of my eyesight. I use Photoshop in order to blow up the images and draw, put all the extra details that I cannot do by hand anymore. But of course, I can't maintain a monthly deadline doing that, which is why I'm retiring. And there are a couple, and I did say this in my retirement letter. If somebody comes up with something interesting and they give me time, who knows, you may see me again.
Like it said, you've been in the industry so long. Has there ever been a period where you've been handed something to draw and you just read it like, wait, what did you want me to do?
That's funny because one of the people I say that about is usually me. One of the things I tell all the writers, because I was talking to a writer artist at one point, how he thinks when he's creating a story. And he said, well, I will never write, as the writer, I will not write something that the artist won't draw. And I heard that, I said, that's the most stagnating thing I've ever heard. To me, if I get a script from a writer and I'm cursing their names as I'm reading it, I know I will be a better artist when I finish it because he's challenging me. He's pushing the envelope. He's tearing the envelope sometimes. But I will be a better artist because I'm facing the challenge and doing my best on it. I did that with myself. For those who remember the first issue of the Baxter Titans series that I drew, and I created this wall of twisted souls as Trigons in Trigon's world, all these gnarled bodies that created bridges. Marv Wolfman's original plot only described bridge. The gnarled bodies was something I wanted to do because it challenged me more. And of course, then I was cursing my name because I drew this and said, oh my God, now I got to draw this for more pages because it's not just one image, it's a scene. So I had to keep drawing it and drawing it and drawing it, cursing my name every single second I drew it. And then thanking myself when I blew it up. So but the thing is, I like it. My second Avengers story I ever drew back when I started my career. Oh my God, I'm drawing the Avengers. What did Steve Englehart do in the very second issue? He threw them into the Old West. I never drew a horse in my life. But I had to learn. I had to get books on it. It made me a better artist faster because they didn't play to my weaknesses. They tried to increase my strength.
Hi.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about why you didn't think New Teen Titans would succeed, and kind of how you felt when you found out it was such a breakout hit for DC at the time?
Well, the history of DC is what made me think it wasn't going to succeed because, the Titans had their legendary run back in the 1960s, with Nick Carty doing the bulk of it. And then it floundered. Then they tried to create a new version of it, which basically was the Justice Little League, because they were just junior versions of already existing adult characters. And Jeanette Kahn, even though it did okay in sales, the publisher hated it. So she was glad when it was gone. So when Marv Wolfman and Len Wein came in and said they had an idea to do a New Teen Titans book, Jeanette was not all that gung-ho. The thing that sold it to her and she was willing to give it a chance was when they said, we've got George Perez to draw it, because she was aware of the work I was doing at Marvel. And the only reason I did it was as a favor to Marv, because I said, I'll do the Teen Titans only if you get me a chance to draw the Justice League. That was the book I wanted to draw. And of course, at that point, first Mike Sikowski and then Dick Dillon were having incredibly long runs on the book. I said, but Dick Dillon's got to have a vacation sometime. Just let me do one issue, and then I'll do the Teen Titans. And as I started Teen Titans, and I can feel kind of guilty about it, Dick Dillon had a heart attack and died. So I ended up having a chance to now do the Justice League. But I promised the Titans, and after the first issue, particularly when DC did the unimaginable by offering a free 16-page comic inside another comic in DC Comics Presents, number 26, to introduce the Titans. It was never done before. You're getting 16 more pages of art without any increase in the price. I think they have a little more faith in this, or they're putting a lot of trust in me. And when the sales figures came in after the third issue, said, this book is doing well. And Marvin and I were being given bonuses and the like and everything else. And I was glad when royalties started coming in because they said, Marvin and I was starting to feel guilty for getting bonuses because this book sold and all these other artists were working so hard. It's not their fault that their books weren't selling. Nothing at DC was selling except the Teen Titans. And DC, in its credit, when they introduced the royalty system, and because of the way it was structured, originally only the Titans was earning royalties. So they lowered the break-even point for books to sell so that other books could start earning royalties too. That was an incredibly brave thing they did all around, thanks to the Teen Titans. Yeah.
All right. One last question to this gentleman right here.
You mentioned that people like Kirby were some of the ones that inspired you. How does it feel knowing that for people today, you're Jack Kirby? You're the person that inspires them. And what kind of advice would you give someone trying to follow in your footsteps?
You know, I'm incredibly flattered and inspired. I think it was when they asked me to come work at CrossGen, when they said, because we want you to be the elder statesman of the company. And I realized that Stan Lee was 13 years younger than I am now when I met him. And he was an icon to me. Other artists, at 65, I realized, I am older than most of these other artists I met in the industry who inspired me. And the fact that young artists who are working here, either who are working professionally or doing their own books, self-publishing, and they were inspired by me, hell yeah, that makes me feel incredible. It makes me feel, particularly when they're pinpointing certain specifics about what I've done for the industry, that I just wanted to be part of the crowd, part of the gang who drew comics, to realize, and again, I think it's because of my sheer love for it, I made a difference. That I was not just another replaceable artist in the industry, that a George Perez comic meant something to people because it was a George Perez comic. And I am flattered. I am flattered by this attention. I never imagined how many people would be responding with such kindness, melancholy as well, when I announced my retirement. And everyone wishing me well, everyone wishing me good health, and thanking me for the years I have been there. And I thank you for letting this little boy from 5 years old get to live his dream and to share it with so many people, and knowing that there are going to be a lot of 5-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 100-year-olds who are going to look at my work and said, he made a difference. And thank you for that.
It's a beautiful spot to land. Everyone give it up for George Perez.